Welcome back. For those of you who've listened to After 40, I welcome you back. For those of you who are just joining today, I hope you'll take a listen to some of our previous episodes. But today, I really am so excited to welcome Melissa Ashley. I've known Melissa Ashley for a couple of years through her work with the Mentor Project. She's been an advisor on our board and has been so helpful in moving the Mentor Project along. But what I didn't know when I first met Melissa was that she had a secret project that she was working on. And it's one that's near and dear to my heart, and near and dear to the hearts of millions of women around the world. And it is a company focused on menopause. So I'm not going to introduce this company further. I'm going to have Melissa talk about it. And Melissa, welcome today. And please tell us all about your journey with your new company.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm always, it's going to sound funny, Debbie, but I'm always happy to talk about menopause because I am one of the millions of women that really struggle trying to understand what was happening to my body, why I was having different issues, and how come nobody could help me. So I sort of took that energy and that challenge and tried to start doing research and came across a brilliant woman out of the UK, my business partner, Laura Biggs, who had also been having similar struggles and had started to try and share a lot of what she was learning, but quickly recognized that there's not a lot of evidence-based information out there. So the company that I co-founded in partnership with Laura is called, first I co-founded Meno Channel, which is a webinar series where we interview highly credentialed menopause experts. And yes, they are out there. And we give women the opportunity to listen in live and ask questions. So if you need to learn more about estrogen, does it cause breast cancer? As opposed to going to social media and asking a lot of women out there that may or may not know the right answer. We bring in some of the top doctors who have written all of the scientific journals, done all the research, and can give you evidence-based information from which you can make your own personal decision. So that was the first company business that we started. And from there, we launched a nonprofit called Menopause Mandate. We run that in the UK, and we've now launched in the US. We've been very lucky to get a few well-known women like Mariella Frustrup in the UK, Naomi Watts in the US, to come in and co-chair the nonprofit with us. And what's super exciting about it is, aside from collecting women's stories, sharing women's stories, advocating for women's health, we also have a free advice line for women. We have it set up now in the UK for a little over a year, where any woman can sign up for 15 minutes to talk to a free menopause nurse practitioner in the UK. We do not prescribe or diagnose. I'm always very specific about that. This is information. This is to help you understand how you can move forward in your journey if you're experiencing symptoms and issues and not getting the support you need from your doctor. We are looking to launch that in the US this year. We're close to getting our funding, so we'll be super excited to help women in the US have that same access to information. And then as we went forward in educating consumers, educating women, educating patients, we very quickly realized that if we didn't start working with companies to recognize that this stage of a woman's life is a biological stage, that it's a major reason why many women in their prime leave their companies, and where younger generations are now looking for women's health benefits before making a decision about taking a job, that if we didn't really start educating companies and making sure that support and resources were available for women once they became more knowledgeable about what was going on, that they were going to bump up against another type of glass ceiling. We wanted to avoid that. So we launched the Women in Work Summits, which we run in the US and the UK, educating corporate executives on the fact that this is a biological stage. It is real. There's a lot of research that still needs to be done behind it, but there are a lot of different ways you can support your female work population so that you can attract and retain a really strong, productive, happy workforce. So those are the three different brands that we've developed within the organization to support women that we're super excited about driving forward.
I did not know before. You had told me this once before, that women leave the workforce due to menopause. That was completely new information to me. And I want I want to know a little bit more about that. Why is it that they're leaving, and how is it that they're leaving? Are they leaving to go to something else? What's happening?
It's a great question. So I'm going to put some numbers out there. So there's approximately 1.3 million women per year that enter menopause, which means that the previous 5 to 7 years for those 1 million women a year are experiencing what's called perimenopause, right? And perimenopause is when everything is in fluctuation, right? Your reproductive system is starting to evolve. Your estrogen levels are constantly fluctuating for the average woman, right? We're going to talk about the average woman, the cisgender woman. We're not going to talk about someone that's had surgically induced menopause at an earlier age. About 5% of women do have early onset menopause. So I'm talking about the average woman around age 50, 51 that has been experiencing perimenopause for a while, which is really where the hot flushes, the night sweats, the brain fog, the lack of sleep, it's really where all those symptoms start to materialize. Probably for about, if you look at some of the estimates out there, about 1/3 of women probably will have very light to no symptoms. It's the 2/3 of women that have symptoms, and it's the 1/3 that have severe symptoms. And then if you look at it by culture and race, certain cultures and races have more severe symptoms, others don't. But so you're thinking 1.3 million a year. By the year 2025, over 1 billion women worldwide will be experiencing menopause. So the question is, why are they leaving their jobs? And some of the stats show that 1 in every 5 women has either left or considered leaving a job due to menopause symptoms. And the reason is, and I am a perfect example of this, is because you are a woman in your prime, you have worked your way, however you view growth within your organization or within your career, you've worked your way up that ladder. You're probably performing close to your peak. And all of a sudden you're waking up 2 and 3 times a night with night sweats, or you're starting to experience hot flashes when you're in meetings. And when most people have what's called vasomotor symptoms first, like those are some of the more common symptoms, right? The night sweats, the hot flashes, all of that. Well, when that happens and you're waking up, that means that you're not actually getting adequate sleep, right? You're not getting that deep sleep that you need to refresh your brain, right? To detoxify your body. So you may be like, oh, it's just night sweats, but it's also leading to tiredness. It's leading to brain fog. It's leading to lack of concentration, right? So a lot of women, all of a sudden, they can't remember what was said in the meeting they were just in, or they struggle to find a word. Anybody that suffered from a migraine knows what it's like when all of a sudden you can't speak, right? Oh, there you go. See, yep. So you start to feel a lot of anxiety. You start to feel, I know for me, I started to become paranoid that I was just losing my mind, right? And all of a sudden you can't perform at the level that you're used to, but there's also such a stigma around aging and these symptoms, and nobody wants to acknowledge it. Nobody's talking about it. I remember my CEO telling me one day that he felt like there was just so much more to me, but why wasn't he seeing it? And honestly, I couldn't articulate it because I just didn't know what was going on. So a lot of women end up leaving the workforce because they can't compete, they can't cope, they're embarrassed, and they're going to their doctor, unfortunately, and they're being put on SSRIs, or being put on anti-anxiety pills or antidepressants because there's too many doctors that unfortunately have not been educated in medical school about this life stage that can last up to 1/3 of a woman's life.
It's so interesting that you say that because I have experienced so many of the symptoms that you're talking about, and I tend to be the sort that I'll experience symptoms for whatever it is, if I have a cold or whatever. And I'm like, oh, well, I have a cold, and I carry on. And these symptoms, the word finding problems, it's not just obvious to me. I'll sit in a classroom and there's somebody who sits in the front, thank goodness, who, as I can't finish my sentence, she's always like eagerly finishing my sentences, coming as I search for a word, which is pretty hysterical. But what you had mentioned, I just kept plowing through, as you said before when we spoke. And I'm sure there are plenty more women that do the same because there's not been a conversation about it.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to complain about.
Right. And if you look at, one of the things that Menopause Mandate does is we collect women's stories and we share them. They're anonymous. So women can either submit stories or they can read them. And if you go in and you read them, they are heartbreaking. And it's the same story over and over, right? It's, I didn't know what to do. I went to my doctor, they dismissed me. They told me I was too young. I finally had to quit my job. My boss told me I couldn't take any more time off. Like, it's just, it's heartbreaking because these are incredibly bright, competent women that are going through a natural physiological change that they have not been informed about. We all know what happens to our hormones when we start to menstruate. We all understand, right? The mood swings, the cramps. We're finally starting to understand endometriosis a little bit, but we talk about it, right? You now see so many products in the market, period underwear for young girls, period bathing suits, right? So, and young girls are very open about it as opposed to, our generation. But then you get to menopause and it's just dead silence. And, if you look at some, Mercer did a study, only 15% of US companies right now that they studied offer menopause benefits. There are so many different studies about the lack of support, but there's also now a lot of studies about the loss and the economic impact, right? And that's where when we talk to companies, as much as we think that there's a moral imperative here, there's also an economic imperative, right? Because the estimates, and I think Mayo Clinic did the latest survey that everyone's been talking about, but there were a number before, 1.8 billion in lost productivity. And then if you layer in all of the healthcare costs that go with it, that number goes up exponentially. So there's an incredible reason to support women because they're going to be around for a very long time. They're incredibly valuable. They're the big consumer. But there's also a huge economic impact that it has, on our company and our country if we don't do a better job.
Well, good points. I love that. I hope this is the first of many dialogues we're going to be able to have about menopause, because after talking with you a couple years ago and learning that you were on this journey to found this company, I started to pay more attention to my body and what I was experiencing. And I have experienced the gamut of it all, but it wasn't spoken to me about by anyone in my life. No one talked about their menopause experience. And the only thing I had ever heard were the jokes where people would say, oh, I'm having a hot flash. But most people don't know that happens at night, or that can happen anywhere.
Correct. And most people don't know that women that experience severe hot flashes have a higher propensity to then experience cardiac concerns as they age, right? There's a lot of correlations now that we're starting to find between the symptoms that you experience and things that you experience as you age. Think about the fact that out of all the Alzheimer's patients in the world, which is a horrible disease, 2/3 are women. Yet rarely has any research been done into why until recently. And for those of you that have been seeing, Dr. Lisa Mosconi, who is she's just phenomenal, has been doing a ton of work for decades on the brain and women's health. I mean, there are so many things that estrogen impacts in women's health, and that when you start to lose that estrogen, you have a higher propensity for heart disease, osteoporosis, Alzheimer's, etc. And there are very simple things that women can do to support their bodies and to support their health to not have to potentially suffer from some of those experiences.
So important to know, and so important for people to be able to have a conversation about this, because if we can prevent future issues while we're alleviating some of the symptoms that we're currently suffering from, boy, is that a win-win. So, Melissa, thank you for talking about menopause today. I hope before we end today, you can give us a couple of ways that we can find out more about menopause and find out about where you're working right now.
Sure, no, I'd be happy to. I mean, the first thing I would say to women is the social media channels are great for commiserating and community building. They're not great for diagnosing. And I always sort of say, like, if you're having a heart attack, you're probably not going on social media and asking, what pill you should take or what doctor you should see. You're getting help. So the first thing I always say to people is if you're suffering, if you're experiencing symptoms, if you're not sure what to do, go get help. If the doctor you're going to is not a menopause practitioner, um, sort of, turns you away, tells you it's no big deal, find another doctor. How do you find another doctor? So the North American Menopause Society, which is the only society in the US right now that certifies OBGYNs and doctors to be certified menopause practitioners. If you go to their website, which is menopause.org, they have a directory of certified NAMS, North American Menopause Certified Practitioners, that you can find. If you go to menochannel.com, which is my website, you can watch interviews with 42, I'm up to 42 different menopause experts, and you can also see the directory there to be able to figure out how to connect with them and reach out to them. The majority of the doctors I interview are still practicing. There's very few that aren't. So the first thing I always say is go to menopause.org, go to menochannel.com, find a doctor that has been trained in menopause, and don't let a doctor that hasn't been trained in menopause scare you away. That's number one. And then number two is take a look at the employee resource groups, business resource group, whatever it's called within the company that you work for. A lot of companies now have ERGs. They have a women's ERG. They may even have one that's now starting to talk a little bit about women's life stages. They are starting to really blossom and have a lot of impact and pull together a lot of great information. I actually go in and talk to a number of them. I'm always happy to come in and talk to anyone's company, but a lot of them are doing some research and work on their own. So they can be a great resource. Go to your HR professional if you're working for a company and ask them if there are any resources within your organization or within your health insurance plan that support women with menopause. I think those are some great places to start. And then I always say to people, and people are always welcome, send me a note. Tell me where you live. Tell me what you need. We'll try and help you. We'll try and help you find places and people that can support you.
This is great advice. So I'm going to just list those again. That is menochannel.com.
Menochannel.com.
And menopause.org.
Menopause.org is the national association, is the North American Menopause Society, which is now, I think, going to be called menopause.org going forward. And they are the official body in the U.S.
Wonderful. And if you have questions that you'd like to post here, you can find us on ITSP Magazine, and you can leave a question or comment there as well. So, Melissa, thank you for coming in today. I do hope we can reconnect and talk more about this topic because it's evolving, it's moving, it's changing in how people are receiving the information and what is now available to us. So I want to say thank you once more for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Debbie. It's great to have people want to talk about the topic, so I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Take care and see you next episode, everyone.